Yeah. Why don't you have a drink? Let me get Ben on the show. Yeah. Keep that energy going. Yeah.
Interesting.
Believe me, judging is flying all around. Before we get to Ben Burgis, author of Give Them an Argument, Logic for the Left, and his debunk segment, we have a new song that Ed has sent us. Do we hear?
We have two versions. We'll go with the long one for the first show here.
I want to go to mockery really badly.
I will.
So please go.
Okay.
You got to restrain me. This is actually pretty funny. Logical analysis. You're going to show us how to argue now. Go. That's funny, right?
This is based on data from a bunch of different countries. There's abundant evidence that that's bullshit.
I like that. I like
One
that.
of your listeners made this?
Yeah. Break it down. Very talented audience. I like the kind of Linton, Kwesi Johnson kind of vibe of
It
that.
goes Animal
into
Collective
it.
at the end.
I'm into it.
Ben Burgis, welcome. How are you doing?
I'm good. That was interesting to listen to.
Hi, Ben.
Ben, meet Alyona.
Hi, how you
Alyona,
doing?
Ben.
Good to meet you.
Pleasure. I guess all mine. Is that what you're saying?
Sorry, no, I'm still,
I just
So,
went
Ben,
like
just
Jeb
as a-
Bush on you. I got really awkward. I was
Just
like,
as a
I don't
warning,
know what
Ben.
to say when I meet people.
Alona's basically drank 2/3 of a beer, so she is ready. She's not fucking around anymore. She's not. But this is to couple your like Logic Lord segments with Alona's like existential crisis. It's going to be a very interesting mashup.
Jesus. I'm just gonna shut up.
Is your logic going to help make decisions? No, because it's more bullshit. It's stupid. That's actually kind of my perspective too, except when it comes to policy stuff, Ben. Although Ben, when are you going to accept that astrology is cool? That's my question.
No,
What sign are you?
Yeah, what
I think
sign are you, Ben?
That one might be a long shot.
What
but,
sign are you, Ben? Alona just asked you a good question. What is it? What's your sign?
Aries.
Oh, so what Aries, in my understanding, is that Aries have a very single, particularly Aries men, apparently.
Wow. Like, I guess you know a lot about this.
Well, could you go? Yeah, go with.
Are you an Aries?
No, I'm not. I'm a more sort of adept sign. But so
Which is?
Aries, I'm a Leo. So
Okay.
Aries, I share a birthday with Fidel Castro, actually.
Wow.
So Aries apparently have like a single pointed focus, which can lead them to really great things, like writing a book mocking Ben Shapiro. But it can also lead to a sort of fanaticism that leads them to not see the subtleties of life, like understanding the charts and the cosmos. All right, so Ben, that being said, it's fine. You're Aries. We get it. Now, what is the debunk segment? Obviously, it's not an astrology because you would never be able to do that.
Yeah.
Yes.
No, that one would be that'd be interesting. Got to see if I can sneak that in some Tuesday night. I'll just like send it to Matt and pretend I forgot to send it to you, and be like, oh, here's the clip we're gonna do, and it'll be a clip of you talking about astrology.
Mm-hmm.
We'll do it on Literary Hangover, Ben.
Yeah, do it on Literary Hangover. Go sit around, do a little cute little podcast together where you fucking alienate half of the population. Go ahead. All right, Ben, what do we have tonight?
All right. So tonight, doing the New York Times editorial board, which has they did an editorial on June 15th, so I guess that was Saturday, called "America Needs More Neighbors," which sounds friendly,
Right.
neighborly. And the opening line, I'll just give you the first couple lines of this. Housing is one area of American life where government really is the problem. The United States is suffering from an acute shortage of affordable places to live, particularly in the urban areas where economic opportunity increasingly is concentrated. And perhaps the most important reason is that local governments are preventing construction, and it just goes on. It's just the sort of typical, YIMBY propaganda, right? Yes, in my backyard, that they nod at a certain point, like, okay, maybe we could have subsidized public housing for some people who need it, but basically what we need is to make it a lot easier to construct, Lucy, market rate private housing, and of course most of those are going to be upscale units to start with, but eventually it'll lead to it'll trickle down, right? Eventually they'll as there's a profusion of private apartments being built, which are mostly upscale at first, eventually that'll lead to it being affordable, and that'll solve all these social problems that are caused by there not being enough housing. And I think that, okay, now, sometimes, we do these debunks, and it feels like, all right, what we're saying about the structure of the argument is true as far as it goes, but, sometimes the things that we're talking about are such obvious effort, like exercises and sophistry and, right-wing rhetoric that, trying to break down exactly what's wrong with the argument logically feels a little bit like correcting the grammar in Mein Kampf. But
that's a good line. I like that. Did you practice that before? And I mean that as a compliment. There's nothing wrong with practicing.
No, I'm just thinking about Mein Kampf as I do, But
that's a casual reference I like to throw around.
But it's like we all do, right?
It took Ben a long time to dissuade me from entitling my book "Mine Ideas." Mine high-level ideas. Okay, go ahead. Mine recovery mode. All right, go ahead. Mine recovery mode. Go ahead.
Nice. But in this case, it really does seem like what's wrong with the art, kind of figuring out what's wrong with the New York Times editorial board's argument here. There's actually a pretty straight line between that and seeing how we need to be pushing back against this as socialists, and where we need to be going forward, right? Because the thing the essential thing that's wrong with the case that they're making for just making it as easy as possible for developers to put lots and lots of, the polite term is market rate, but, expensive, unaffordable housing, is that it relies on this false dilemma fallacy that, the only choices are either just not constructing more housing or just getting out of the way and, letting the invisible free hand of the free market take care of the problem. And of course, there is a third option, which would be much better, which is what's sometimes called FIMBYism, right? Public housing in my backyard. The People's Policy Project has really good stuff about this. They put out a paper about this a little while ago. But basically, this is not, last week, Bhaskar Sankara, was talking about how it's important, not to sort of pitch radical ideas as a wild leap into the unknown. But in this case, it's really not, right? This is well-tested stuff, right? That there is, in the United States, we tend to see public housing as something, because of the way it's been done in this country, we tend to see that, as associated with the sort of social problems that you get from segregating the poorest and most desperate people into public housing projects. But there are lots of examples from around the world of social democratic governments and even non-social democratic governments like Singapore, where 80% of the citizens live in some form of public housing. I've been to Singapore. I have a friend who teaches there. There's, lots of, upper and, middle income people live in these units, or like Sweden, where there are 8 million people and 1 million of them live in public housing, or the city of Vienna, where to this day, 60% of the population lives in public housing. And it turns out if you actually, instead of just saying, either we have to live with there not being enough housing, or we just have to get out of the way and let private developers do it and let them make as much money as possible to incentivize them, if we said, no, the government could just build it themselves, right? And cities, right, could just do this, right? The People's Policy Project calls for federal aid, but, a city like New York, could absolutely afford to do this, even on its own, even without that aid tomorrow.
Right.
So,
they could do it. Start the first pieces of money to do it could be by taxing the hell out of the real estate industry that ruins this city and tortures so many people on a regular basis.
Is this going to be like before or after they fix the subway?
I think it's going to be
so good at doing these things in New York City.
Well, the subway is not. I mean, the subway is not the city's fault.
This is true.
Right?
This is true.
This is like a pretty classic example though, like of. And I'm not a De Blasio fan, but like, you definitely have these problems that are created by like the state starving resources and not taxing people properly to begin with, not taxing the wealthy properly to begin with, and then it just like pops up as like some organic thing, and everybody all of a sudden is like, look, they can't handle it. And it's like, well, how are they going to handle it? Right? Yeah. Like, you didn't give them what they need to handle it.
Fair enough. Way to just shut down my snarky comment.
Hey,
well, I mean, Leos do that.
You know what, Ben? That was fucking great.
Everything.
And Leo, finally. Thank you, Ben.
Wait, when's your birthday? That means it's coming up if you're a Leo.
In August 13th. I bet your wife was relieved to hear that, Ben. What's her sign?
Let's see. Her birthday is in mid-October, so what would that make her?
Oh, she's a Scorpio.
Scorpio, yeah.
Hell yeah, dude. Well done, Ben. Scorpios are good. All right, brother. The book is Give Them an Argument, Logic for the Left, and forthcoming from Zero Books, A Guide to Revolution Through the Stars. Ben Burgis uses the astro chart to chart a new politics. Ben, I'm looking forward to that book especially after Slug. Yeah.
Me too. That one sounds great.
Doesn't that one sound good, Alyona?
Right up my alley.
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah. No, I've been doing some videos for
dude, chicks
for
love
Books
astrology
to promote it. I've gotten a lot of flack for cultural appropriation, but
Yeah, stop being so otherizing and accept astrology.
Well, Adorno wrote a book, The Stars Down to Earth.
Well, look, if Adorno wrote a book because he was trying to work with the chart, or if it was some
he read the astrology column of the LA Times for an entire year. And he wrote an entire book of critical theory based on that.
Interesting.
Because it is sort of interesting because like the argument that he makes is
you think like Adorno was rolling up on girls in cafes like not only do I know theory, but
I mean think about him hanging out in LA. That always cracks me up a little bit.
That is hilarious.
I find astrology
like depressive European.
I feel like if you really read about astrology though, it is kind of fascinating and it pulls you in because obviously, well, everyone likes to read about themselves, right? And so it's like it's gonna give you whatever you want to read. And then I also just love the manufactured industry around horoscopes that are created like by people who, I mean, they're just made up. Like some guy is just like sitting in his room being like, yeah, I had to like write these texts. So I just like Googled something, send it like these people signed up to pay me to send them like their horoscope every day. I know someone.
Well, wait, that was what Adorno's book was about, right?
Well, I know someone who did this who had nothing to do with astrology. He was just a business person. And he was like, yeah, I would just make up the text. I was writing them.
So wait, did it match though? Because actually, David, because didn't Adorno find what it was like the middle management principle?
Yeah, so it's like the thing. One Adorno, sort of figured out that mainly people were reading the astrology column were women, and particularly women who were at home during the day.
The ladies.
So it's like interesting that he was able to highlight a lot of like the ideology that was put forward.
Yeah.
It was like, yeah, you're an important person, but you're not like the most important person in the company that you work at. If you're feeling stressed, take care of your house. Like make sure, do some chores and stuff like that. It's very subtle. I mean, they weren't being that explicit about it.
Yeah,
but it was basically, it's like, yeah, you might be feeling really depressed and unappreciated or whatever. But if you're feeling unappreciated, cook a nice dinner for your family.
Wow.
Jesus Christ.
That's what I'm saying.
That's exactly what I'm trying to say. Get in your chart, bitch. But I think but that's fascinating though, because I bet if Adorno wrote it today though, it would be much more like your startup is what the world needs. Like, don't feel bummed that people aren't liking your Instagram posts about your like catering company that you've been forced into through multiple downsizings. your unique purpose. I bet it would fit that like neoliberal self-actualization model.
Yeah.
But back then it was fitting just like the patriarchy of, what was it, the 40s or the 50s?
Yeah, now it's all.
I think this is like 60s, 70s.
Yeah. No, that's fascinating. Well, there you have it, Ben. I hope you be a little bit more open-minded.
I'm
Certainly
an
it's-
Aquarius, by the way, in case you were wondering.
You're totally Aquarius.
Just wanted to let you know.
Yeah. I should have checked that before I agreed to us co-hosting. Can Leos and Aquarius co-host? Fuck.
We could write a whole book
Yeah, right. Yeah.
about the Leo Aquarius
Leo-
dynamic.
Yeah. Co-hosting across the stars. The content is the solar system. All right.
God.
I'm good at that
The
shit.
Starcast.
The star. Nice. All right, Ben Burgis. Pleasure as always.
Bye, Ben.
Go get a tarot
Bye,
reading.
Alyona.
Bye.
Thanks.
That's
Bye.
a little different.
No, I know it's different, but it's in the same realm. You've just watched a Michael Brooks show video, and you can watch all of our full main live shows every Tuesday night at around 7 p.m. Eastern Time, and subscribe to get all of the clips you want. We're covering the globe. We're focusing on international relations, the intellectual dark web. We're having fun. We're doing deep dives with a lot of amazing guests. Of course, become a patron for the whole thing at patreon.com/TMBS, or subscribe to this YouTube channel and help us keep growing and get that content out there. Subscribe below.